From the northern shores and woodlands to the west, it's history. From copper mines and iron ore, the Great Lakes fishery, to the farmlands of the southern counties and east to Chesapeake Bay. Look at all that waits the sportsman across the USA. And sometimes when the moon brings out the diamonds in the snow, the stillness of the forest is encased in Arctic cold. The wind might whisper through the trees, listen to it say the beauty of our great outdoors across the USA.
Hi there, come on in. If you're an outdoor sportsman, you stay tuned because we're going to take you to Alaska fishing for sockeye salmon. Let me tell you, they battle. They're tasty, fun to catch. We're going to show you a story on white-tailed deer antlers. Deer while they're in the velvet. What are these antlers all about? And you ever thought about having a baby raccoon for a pet? Well, we'll talk about that too. And a recipe, an award-winning recipe called Salmon Pate. Oh, it's terrific. So you stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost. It's time for the Outdoor Digest.
I don't know what kind of fish I'm used to catching, but usually they tie her out before this. There we go.
Weekly telecast of Outdoor Digest is made possible through the cooperation of this and other public television stations nationwide. Weekly production of the Outdoor Digest television show is a function of Fred Trost's Outdoors Club, promoting public understanding of hunting and fishing, appreciation of wildlife, and enjoyment of our great outdoors. Gary Pogany's Cessna swings low over the waters of Lake Clark and Lake Iliamna to the west. This is the Bristol Bay region of Alaska, famous for its salmon runs. There's no way to drive to this country, or in this country for that matter. It's remote, 150 miles west of Anchorage over a major mountain range. Everybody up here, it seems, has a pilot's license. That's how you get around. And that's how we went from fishing hole to fishing hole, sometimes several in the same day. Gary looks for fish in the rivers and sets the pontoon down within 100 yards of migrating salmon. As I cast out into the rocky riverbed, I can see thousands of sockeyes streaming by. There we go!
Oh, through the fly. Hey, that was quite a performance, though. This is great. Quite a performance. But look at this rig that I'm using right here. Very simple. It's this fairly heavy line, probably 12, 14-pound test, with a couple split shot sinkers, foot and a half up, and just a black salmon fly. Now, I don't know what it looks like to them. They don't seem to really be feeding, but that's all there is to the rig. Cast it out upstream, just a whole quartering upstream, right past the school. The school seems to be swimming by about 25, 30 feet offshore here.
They migrate in a column, a rather tight, narrow group. From where we are, the line of salmon extends for miles and miles, both directions.
Get the fly out there, Bob. Yeah, really close, too.
One of our guides, Bill, tries to tail a sockeye, which isn't easy. These fish are energetic.
This is a kick. This is something. It's not like there's no fish to choose from here. Now, you'd think that fish is tired, wouldn't you? No, not by a long shot.
We're fishing mid-July in the continental United States. It's hot, but in Alaska, it's a comfortable 60 degrees. The water's cold, and the fish never seem to give up. We haven't had our lines in the water for 5 minutes yet, and the action is non-stop. Now, we did hit lulls later on. 4 or 5 minutes without a fish. That's what they call a lull in Alaska. Now, this fish may not have been ready to quit, but I was ready, so I made my move.
Fish number 2 for about 5 minutes of fishing.
After an hour of this, Gary said, "Let's go. We're going to check out some new spots." And here's a river outlet into Lake Iliamna. Those dark patches? That's right. Those are salmon. Lots of salmon. Lots and lots of salmon. The main school must have had tens of thousands of migrating sockeyes, all staying relatively close to shore near the river outlet. When we landed and cast towards the school, we'd watch the frisky ones porpoise. They're not feeding now, but they will hit lures and flies.
Oh, my.
Fishing was so easy here, I did it sitting down.
I suppose this is how I get the reputation that all I do is just hunt and fish every day. Look at the fish jumping out there. This fish is frankly a real pleasure to catch. Oh, great. Now, it might be ready to beach. You're going to have to excuse me, folks. I'm going to have to get up now. Hey. Oh, my.
8-pounder?
I tell you, when they're hooked in the mouth right in that tough stuff. There we go.
Most of these fish were silvery or light pink, even though they were many miles from the ocean.
Sockeye salmon.
Sockeyes are the most commercially valuable of the Pacific salmon, a high oil content, tasty on the grill, red meat. At maturity, they average 5 to 7 pounds. The world record is a little over 15. Now, they never seem to give up the fight. I hand this one to Gary Pogany. It'll be filleted and frozen in a few hours. Also looking for salmon was this grizzly bear across the river mouth. About 5 minutes earlier, there were a half-dozen anglers standing where this grizzly is walking. You're going to hear their plane taking off in a minute when I'm landing a nice rainbow trout. We were a little concerned about that bear. If it started across the river, hey, we'd run. But until then, I was determined to finish the battle with a rainbow trout that Gary Pogany had hooked. He wanted to give me the chance to land it. There's no doubt where the rainbow trout got its name.
Oh, man. There we go. Oh, boy. That's as pretty as they come.
In Manitoba, we used barbless hooks successfully on walleye and northern pike, but I'm not sure how they'd stay in these thrashing and jumping trout and salmon. I think the barb helps keep these fish hooked, but it sometimes creates a problem in releasing them. And in this part of Alaska, all rainbows must go back.
There we go. There we go. Oh!
Beautiful, or is that beautiful?
That's as pretty as a fish is made, I'll tell you.
We caught a few of these prized rainbows, and we caught all the salmon we could handle. At Osprey Lodge, Gary and the guides would fillet these fish as soon as we got back. They'd be frozen in hours and on the grill soon after we got home. We only fished for sockeye like this one day in Alaska. If you can believe it, there were other fish to catch other places, and we spent 4 more days doing it. We've eaten that sockeye salmon right there that you saw me dragging in the water to the plane. We've had that all year long, just dug out what appears to be the last package. Freezer burned. It's too bad. You really have to eat fish when it's fresh. Wish I would have, but that gives me an excuse to go back to Alaska next year. It's on my docket, believe me. Now let's take a look at a fish that, well, actually it fights almost as well as the salmon, but it gets absolutely no respect. You know what I'm talking about, the carp. Analyzing our 1990 Moosehead Fishing Awards, most trophy carp were taken in rivers. 29 carp were taken altogether. The Grand River had the most with 8. 8 were caught in the Great Lakes. We'd have to include Muskegon Lake in that because it has an open channel to Lake Michigan. The landlocked inland lake that produced the most trophy carp over 32 inches was Wolf Lake in Van Buren County. 3 20-pound-plus carp were caught from Wolf Lake last year that made our trophy book. This is one of those golden salmon that came from Wolf Lake, a 36.5-inch, 22-pound carp that Jeff Ply from Kalamazoo caught at 2:30 in the afternoon, still fishing with a perch minnow. You can bet that fish gave him a tussle. Look what Christina Ford from Holly caught casting a jitterbug for bass the last week in August in Lapeer County's Rose Lake. That's a 17-inch crappie, 2.5 pounds. Wow. Taxidermist John Hook pulls a lot of big walleye from the Au River. This 11-pounder hit a Rebel fast track just at dark the last week in August. On August 31st, 4-year-old Walt Buys III was fishing night crawlers with his dad on the Rifle River where they catch a lot of suckers. This was just at dark, 8:30 p.m., and little Walt latched onto a big one. Turned out to be a 22-inch inland brown trout. What a trophy. Another late August inland brown trout, 20.5 inches. Lon de Kuiper caught it on a crawler from Newaygo County's White River. Guess what time? 8 p.m. just before dark. That's the key in late August. Just to get you ready for hunting season, here's Lonnie Latunsky's Shiawassee County buck. It just makes the minimum in our Williams Gunsight Hunting Awards. Now, it falls short in the point category. It has 9, needs 10, but it makes it on maximum outside spread. Our minimum is 18 inches. Lonnie's buck has 19. Bow season is just a month away. But salmon fishing is best right now. John Acaros was trolling a pearl dodger and glow squid off Alpena at 10 in the morning, a key time for king salmon, when the action went berserk just like the good old days.
Well, me and a good friend of mine, Mike Matson, were out one morning. We couldn't get anybody else to go up with us for the whole weekend. And it was just me and him fishing, and this was like the second leg of a triple header. We were just putting a fish in the net, and this rod popped. And then about a minute into this one's battle, another rod popped. So me and him were just standing back there giggling and laughing and reeling fish.
He's psyching us up for a return of the salmon with this 43.5-inch Chinook that weighed almost 30 pounds. So let's make John Acaros from Rochester our Outdoors Club Trophy Salmon Fisherman of the Week. Raccoons. These little characters, they're presented in movies as being fun-loving. Actually, they can be quite dangerous. Right now, we have an epidemic of raccoon population around the country because of the anti-fur movement. Trappers aren't trapping them. They have developed distemper, rabies. They are predators on ducks all over the country and have become quite a problem. But still, people look at this and they say, oh, they're cute. I'd like to have one for a pet. Should you? Let's go to Wildlife Acres in the Irish Hills of Michigan and find out.
There's my little babies. There they are. They're out playing now.
You just have
Look
3
at
of them here?
Yeah, we've got just the 3 little baby coons in here. These are from this year's litter. These are about probably 8 or 9 weeks old. But they're just little troublemakers. They're so nosy and they get into everything. If you have them in the house as a pet, you gotta have a place to keep them if you're not able to watch them, because they'll get in your refrigerator if you got one of these magnetic types, or they'll get in your cupboards and eat all your cereal. They're just little troublemakers.
They're like monkeys. I've heard monkeys make the worst pets in the world because they're like a totally hyperactive child that won't leave anything alone anytime, and they're destructive even.
Yeah, I can believe that. I've never had a monkey as a pet, but
It's like having an infant and a teenager all rolled into one.
That's about right. Yes, they're very, inquisitive, and they want to see what in the world everything does and how you can get into things and how you can get out of things. So they have a way of just working. Their hands are just like people's hands. They pick up their food, and you can see they work their cage. They just he's grabbing that leaf over there. Yeah, they're cute.
Now, when a raccoon though gets big, There are problems with big raccoons.
Yes,
The
there
ones
are.
that are a couple years old.
Yeah, a lot of times when they go into breeding season, sometimes even in the first year, they get real mean and nasty, and sometimes they will come out of that after the breeding time. But you want to be very, very careful with them when they are, temperamental like that, because they can really do some damage to you. You've got to be very careful. They're a lot of fun to have. Probably about 85% of the raccoons though will turn mean, after a while.
So you have to plan on getting rid of a raccoon, really doing something with it.
Yes.
To a zoo or somewhere, because as a pet, after they're maybe 2 or 3 years old,
Right.
they pretty much shot their good personality.
Yeah, they're not like the baby fun when the fun that you have with them when they're babies. But some of these raccoons that are out in the public are very nice, and they can be very old too. We've got some people that have owned several of them, and they keep them right in their house with them. And they've got usually like a dog kennel, the big dog kennels that they keep like in a kitchen or utility room, or they keep them at night when they're not watching them, and they just stay in their house, and they use a litter box just like cats do. But a lot of times they will get mean when they get older.
How good are white-tailed deer at using natural camouflage? 6 veteran hunters combed a square mile of forest where 39 deer were fenced. It took the hunters 4 days to spot 1 buck. I'd say that's pretty darn good at using natural camouflage. The DNR's Porter Ranch, the deer research station at Houghton Lake, an impressive sight in September when a 5-acre research pen is full of big bucks. Quite a picture, isn't it? White-tailed deer often stand perfectly still in the woods. Right here, you wouldn't see them if they didn't move their ears from different directions to try to hear better. The occasional flicks of their tails is a signal that they're relatively comfortable. But when there's a group of deer, the entire group is influenced by the deer that's the most nervous, the one that's the least comfortable. The other deer assume that the nervous one saw something, or heard something, or smelled something that they didn't. When one bolts, the others often follow. Deer that are spooked like to head for cover. The perfect cover is grass, especially in the fall when the dried grass is brown, a perfect match for their coats. They disappear when they don't move. There, a slight movement and you can see the deer. Hunters take a lesson. When you sit in the blind, sit still. Deer won't see you, but move, scratch your ear, turn your head, that's all it takes, and you'll be seen. That's why deer stand still for such long periods of time. They lay down, they watch, they listen. They're most alert when they're still, and they're least alert when they're moving. It's a lesson we can learn. It's an amazing collection of racks, isn't it? You might wonder how so many big buck deer can be so close together and get along so well. That's the time of year. Their coats are changing from the reddish, thin summer hair to the grayish, thicker winter coat of hollow hairs that will give them insulation from the cold. Their antlers right here are still in the velvet, although by now that velvet has dried. Their antlers have hardened and they've rubbed the velvet off. This change in their antlers is caused by the production of testosterone, a male hormone that is now starting to course through their veins. This is what causes their antlers to harden and the velvet to dry. Days earlier, they avoided touching their antlers against any branch. But when the velvet dries, they go out of their way to rub those hardened antlers against every branch they see. As the fall progresses, they don't stop rubbing on trees after the velvet is rubbed off. In fact, the bigger bucks especially thrash against limbs, tear up the brush. It's that male hormone that changes their appearance and their temperament. There's quite a variety in the size of these antlers. You can't always judge how old a buck is, though, by the size of its rack. 3 factors go into the antler size. Genetics has a lot to do with the shape and the number of points a buck will have, and the basic size. But food is a much bigger factor than many people realize. A good diet for deer in the summer that contains 16 to 18% protein, and if the minerals in the soil give the deer enough calcium and phosphorus, well, a 1.5-year-old buck will have a large rack. 8 to 10 points isn't uncommon. Now, these deer aren't all that old. They're just well fed. That's why their racks are so massive. As they get older, their racks will become larger, but past the age of 5 or 6, the antler size starts to decrease again. Deer are very aware of the size of their antlers, each other's antlers. It's usually the bucks with the biggest racks that command the most fear and respect from the others. That's because he's the best fed, in the best condition, and in prime breeding age. And it's his genes that will be passed on to the most does during the breeding season. Quite a difference in the size of the deer, the condition of their coats, and the shapes of their racks. But at this time, it's easy to pick out the dominant bucks. In this group, it'll be the deer that nature is preparing for breeding first. We can tell because his testosterone will start to flow sooner, his coat changes earlier. He'll have the velvet off his antlers first, and he'll begin breeding with the does earlier than the rest. In December, he'll shed his antlers earlier. He'll also be the buck in the worst physical condition. In a hard winter, the bucks that did the most breeding will be the ones who don't see another summer, but many of his offspring will. That's how nature perpetuates the fittest. Where's that dominant buck? Well, we've been looking at him. He's the one with the independent attitude. Even in a group, he tends to walk alone. He's easy to pick out. The big boy isn't always moving with the group. He walks slower, listens more, watches, moves when he wants to, but prefers to stay alert. He has a big job ahead of him this fall, lots of does to chase. And these bucks, well, he'll be fighting with them if they get in his way. You'll be amazed at how many deer are in the grassy fields. They bed there, they're hidden, they're comfortable. There's a buck here with a main beam tine that appears to be bent down, the one on the right. I guess he bumped it in the summer when it was soft. Normally the tines would grow up and be more symmetrical like that one. Every hunter has his own individual idea of the best looking rack. What is it for you? The most points? The most symmetrical? The widest? They're all impressive in their own ways, and they're all beautiful. Now, this has been an unusual chance to see a big group of big bucks all in the velvet, but their velvet is gone by now. The deer aren't as compatible, and they'll be moved to other pens. Glad we got a chance to see these bucks. Most of us won't even see one buck this size in the woods this fall. But whatever we do see will be fine. To a deer hunter, there's no prettier sight or a more majestic sight than a white-tailed deer. Salmon Pate, an elegant dish that Gary Ware from Hastings brought to our Fish and Wild Game Cooking Contest, took second place. Kathy Beitler, this is really an elegant recipe for the holidays.
Oh, absolutely. It's got a lot of different ingredients that you don't normally find in a fish dish that we've done here. You got salmon, and you're going to go ahead and grind that, and tiny shrimp and crab meat. And you want to grind all this together so that it makes a paste. And you could put it through a food processor.
A lot of people, when they hear pate, they think of liver paste.
Yes, this is totally different from that, believe me. And you got your chilled egg whites to hold everything together, and then cream. And it's a very rich recipe, like you say, and it will go great for the holidays. And tomato paste for a little bit of color and flavor, a little bit of different flavor in there. And here's where some of your sweetness comes from. There's your nutmeg, and you got a little bit of white pepper for a little bit of spice. And tarragon, which kind of tastes like an anise type.
It's good with fish. I like tarragon on broiled fish.
Yeah, it complements fish very well. And a little bit of rosemary, which you usually find in fish dishes also. And just going to make a paste out of all of this together. A little bit of salt if you want to. And then you're going to put this into a loaf dish that you line with ham slices. and you want to butter your dish first, and then just go ahead and put everything in here.
Interesting. But this is actually, even though it looks in some degrees like an appetizer, you cook it up like a loaf and it's a main dish.
Absolutely. And you want to put your dish into a pan of water, and then it actually just kind of steams in there rather than baking on the sides of the pan.
And Bob Garner's comment goes along the lines of how sweet it is.
Oh, this is good, but it's rich, and I think it's richer to me than most fish dishes because of the nutmeg in it. It's really a spicy sort of nutmeg. Make a great hors d'oeuvre, something like that.
It's supposed to be. It's an appetizer.
Be really good, but this is not something I think you want to sit down and eat plates full.
No. Be great with crackers.
That's got to be a first.
Yes.
Well, yeah, it's not that it's a bad recipe. It's a very good recipe, and it did very well with the judges, including myself. But it is rich, and you got to know that going in. It's like you can't sit down and eat a whole pecan pie. You know, one little slice, maybe.
I can. Now, that's where I'm going to pull ahead of you.
Okay. We'll serve it with pecan pie, okay?
Yeah, but I think it has a holiday.
It is. Very
Flavor to
festive.
it.
It's a unique
Because of the
recipe and a
sweetness.
good recipe, a very good recipe.
We got it out of him.
There you go.
It's a good recipe, but he doesn't want to eat a lot of it.
I just can't eat tons of it. That's
Well, another half hour is just whizzed by here on Outdoor Digest. We go a lot of places, do a lot of things. I hope to see you here next week. I also hope you can get outdoors this weekend. It's a great place to be. Weekly telecast of Outdoor Digest is made possible through the cooperation of this and other public television stations nationwide. Weekly production of the Outdoor Digest television show is a function of Fred Trost's Outdoors Club, promoting public understanding of hunting and fishing, appreciation of wildlife, and enjoyment of our great outdoors. Fish number 2 for about 5 minutes of fishing.